The cold marble floor of the executive bathroom felt like ice against Zara Williams' palms as she gripped the sink edge, fighting back tears that threatened to spill down her dark cheeks. Her reflection stared back at her, professional blazer slightly wrinkled, natural hair pulled back in a neat bun, brown eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and rage that she couldn't let anyone see. Not here. Not in the Sterling Corporation building where showing weakness was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. Easily replaceable. The words echoed in her mind like a cruel song. Alexander Sterling had said those words to her 20 minutes ago in front of 12 board members, his voice as cold as winter rain. She had simply suggested that their failing charity initiative might benefit from actually talking to the communities they claimed to help. The suggestion had been met with uncomfortable silence before her boss delivered his verdict with the precision of a surgeon's knife. Zara straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath. She had been Alex's executive assistant for 2 years, 2 long years of organizing his life, managing his schedule, and watching him treat people like they were disposable. She had endured the late nights, the impossible demands, and the complete lack of basic human decency because she needed this job. Her mother's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves, and positions at companies like Sterling Corporation didn't come around often for someone like her. But today felt different. Today, something inside her had cracked and she wasn't sure she could put the pieces back together. The bathroom door opened with a soft whoosh, and Jennifer Martinez, one of the junior executives, walked in. Jennifer had always been kind to Zara, one of the few people in the building who treated her like a human being rather than a piece of office equipment. "Zara, honey, are you okay?" Jennifer's voice was gentle, concerned. What happened in there was completely out of line. Zara forced a smile, the same professional mask she had perfected over the years. "I'm fine, really. Just needed a moment to collect myself." Jennifer wasn't buying it. She moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Everyone in that room knows you're the reason half of Alex's projects succeed. The man would forget to eat if you didn't remind him. What he said about you being replaceable. That's the biggest lie he's ever told, and trust me, I've heard some doozies." The kindness in Jennifer's voice almost broke Zara's resolve. She had been holding her emotions in check for so long that genuine sympathy felt like a dam bursting. "It doesn't matter what I do or how hard I work. To him, I'm just another employee. Less than that, actually. I'm invisible." "You're not invisible to the rest of us," Jennifer said firmly. "And deep down he knows it too. Alex Sterling might be brilliant at making money, but he's an idiot when it comes to people. Don't let his stupidity make you doubt your worth." Zara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Jennifer squeezed her shoulder gently before leaving, and Zara was alone again with her reflection and her racing thoughts. She thought about the morning 2 years ago when she had first walked into Sterling Corporation, fresh out of college with a business degree and determination that could move mountains. She had been so excited about the opportunity, so ready to prove herself in the corporate world. The salary was better than anything she had ever dreamed of, enough to help her family and still have something left over for herself. Alex Sterling had been intimidating from day one. Tall, sharp-featured, with gray eyes that seemed to look right through people. He was only 32, just 4 years older than her, but he carried himself like someone who had never known doubt or failure. His success story was legendary, taking over his father's struggling company at 25 and turning it into a billion-dollar empire within 5 years. But success had come at a cost. The Alex Sterling who had built this empire was cold, calculating, and completely disconnected from the human cost of his ambition. He treated employees like numbers on a spreadsheet, discarding anyone who couldn't keep up with his impossible pace. Zara had watched dozens of good people get fired or quit because they couldn't handle his demands. She had survived because she was good at her job, maybe too good. She anticipated his needs before he knew he had them, solved problems before they became disasters, and made his life run smoothly. But instead of appreciation, she got indifference. Instead of recognition, she got more work piled on her desk. The charity project had been her breaking point. Sterling Corporation's public image had been taking hits lately, with articles calling Alex a heartless corporate machine, and criticizing the company's lack of community involvement. The board had decided they needed a charity initiative to improve their reputation, and Alex had assigned the project to his marketing team. But the marketing team knew nothing about charity work or community needs. Their first proposal had been tone-deaf and insulting, a plan to gift computers to inner-city schools without asking what the schools actually needed or wanted. Zara had grown up in those neighborhoods. She knew those schools needed so much more than equipment they couldn't afford to maintain. So she had done her homework. She had spent her weekends visiting community centers, talking to teachers and parents, researching what kind of help would actually make a difference. She had put together a comprehensive plan that would not only improve Sterling Corporation's image but actually help people. And Alex had dismissed her input like she was a child interrupting grown-up conversation. Zara looked at her reflection one more time, seeing something new in her eyes. The hurt was still there, but it was being joined by something else: determination. She was tired of being treated like she didn't matter. She was tired of watching Alex make mistakes she could help him avoid. Most of all, she was tired of being invisible. She straightened her blazer, checked her hair, and walked out of the bathroom with her head held high. The executive floor was quiet, most of the board members having returned to their offices after the disastrous meeting. Alex's corner office door was closed, which usually meant he didn't want to be disturbed. Too bad for him. Today Zara Williams was done being quiet. She walked past her desk without stopping, her heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. She could feel other employees watching her, probably wondering if she was about to do something spectacular and career-ending. Maybe she was. At this point she didn't care. She knocked once on Alex's door, a firm, confident sound that seemed to echo in the quiet hallway. Without waiting for permission, she turned the handle and walked in. Alex was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that dominated one wall of his office, looking out at the city spread below him like a kingdom he ruled. He didn't turn around when she entered, his shoulders rigid with tension. "I don't remember asking you to come in," he said, his voice carrying that familiar edge of irritation. "We need to talk," Zara said, closing the door behind her. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure he could hear it, but her voice was steady. "If this is about what happened in the meeting, there's nothing to discuss. The decision has been made." Alex still hadn't turned around, and something about his dismissive posture made Zara's anger flare brighter. She had spent 2 years being professional, being patient, being everything a good assistant should be. Where had it gotten her? "The decision to fail?" she asked, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Because that's what's going to happen if you go forward with that marketing team's plan." Now he turned, his gray eyes cold and assessing. Alex Sterling in full corporate mode was intimidating, she had to give him that. He had perfected the art of making people feel small with just a look. But today Zara was done shrinking. "Excuse me?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "You heard me." Zara stepped further into the room, her chin lifted defiantly. "That charity plan is going to be a disaster, and you know it. But you'd rather fail spectacularly than admit that your assistant might know something you don't." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Alex's expression didn't change, but Zara could see something shifting behind his eyes. Surprise maybe. No one talked to him like this anymore. No one dared. "You're out of line," he said finally. "Am I? Or am I the only person in this building brave enough to tell you the truth?" Zara's voice was gaining strength with every word. "You want to know why your charity project is going to fail? Because you designed it in a boardroom by people who have never set foot in the communities you claim to want to help. You're offering solutions to problems you don't understand, and when someone who actually knows what they're talking about tries to help you, you shut them down." Alex's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "That was something, at least. I grew up in those neighborhoods," Zara continued, her voice passionate now instead of angry. "I know what those kids need, what those families are struggling with. I've done the research, talked to the people, put together a plan that could actually make a difference. But you don't want to hear it because it came from the wrong person." "And what person is that?" Alex asked, his voice still cold but with an undertone she couldn't quite identify. Zara felt something inside her settle, a calm certainty that surprised her. "Someone you've decided doesn't matter. Someone easily replaceable." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Alex's expression finally shifted, a flicker of something that might have been guilt crossing his features before the mask slammed back into place. "If you're done with your speech," he said, moving behind his desk like it was a fortress, "I have work to do." But Zara wasn't done. Not even close. "I'm not finished," she said, and there was something in her voice that made Alex look up sharply. "I have a proposal for you." Alexander Sterling had built his life on predictability. Every morning began at 5:30 with a workout in his private gym, followed by coffee that was always Colombian dark roast, always served at exactly 160 degrees. His suits were tailored by the same Italian designer, his car was always waiting at the same spot, and his day was planned down to 5-minute intervals by the most efficient assistant he had ever employed. That assistant was currently standing in his office, having just delivered the most disrespectful speech anyone had dared give him in years, and instead of firing her on the spot like he should have, Alex found himself curious about what she was going to say next. It was an unfamiliar feeling, curiosity. Most people in his life were entirely predictable. A proposal, he repeated, settling into his leather chair with the kind of controlled movements that had intimidated countless business rivals. You realize you're in no position to be making proposals, Miss Williams? But even as he said it, Alex was studying Zara with new eyes. In 2 years of working together, he had never really looked at her, not like this. She was tall for a woman, maybe 5'7", with the kind of natural confidence that couldn't be taught in business school. Her dark skin had a warm undertone that seemed to glow even under the harsh office lighting, and her brown eyes held an intelligence that Alex was just now recognizing he had been ignoring. She was beautiful, he realized with a start. How had he never noticed that his assistant was beautiful? Actually, I think I'm in the perfect position, Zara said, and Alex refocused on her words instead of his unexpected observations. Your charity project is failing before it even starts. Your biggest client, Harrison Industries, is already asking questions about Sterling Corporation's community involvement. If this initiative falls flat, you're going to lose more than just public goodwill. Alex's attention sharpened. Harrison Industries was indeed his biggest client, responsible for nearly 30% of Sterling Corporation's annual revenue. He had been in negotiations with them for months about renewing their contract, and lately their CEO had been making noises about wanting to work with companies that shared their values of community responsibility. How do you know about Harrison Industries? He asked, his voice careful. Zara's smile was small but satisfied. Because I do my job, Mr. Sterling. I pay attention to things that matter to this company, even when those things don't involve scheduling your lunch meetings or booking your travel. The subtle dig hit its mark, but Alex found himself more impressed than insulted. Continue. Harrison's CEO, Robert Harrison, grew up in Detroit. His company has been quietly supporting urban development projects for the past 5 years. He's not interested in surface-level charity work designed to improve corporate image. He wants to see real impact, real change. The kind of change that comes from understanding communities, not just throwing money at them. Alex leaned back in his chair, his mind already working through the implications. Robert Harrison was notoriously difficult to impress, a self-made billionaire who had never forgotten his humble beginnings. If Harrison Industries walked away from their partnership, it would be more than a financial blow. It would signal to other clients that Sterling Corporation was out of touch with modern corporate responsibility. And you believe you can deliver the kind of results that would satisfy Robert Harrison, Alex said. It wasn't quite a question. I know I can, Zara replied without hesitation. But it would require you to trust me, to actually listen to what I have to say instead of dismissing me because I'm not part of your usual inner circle. Trust. The word sat uncomfortably in Alex's mind. He had built his empire on self-reliance, on never depending on anyone else's judgment but his own. Trusting other people led to disappointment, betrayal, failure. He had learned that lesson early and learned it well. But he was also practical above all else. If Zara Williams could save the Harrison Industries contract, then his personal feelings about trust were irrelevant. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. Zara stepped closer to his desk and Alex caught a hint of her perfume, something light and warm that reminded him of summer evenings. When had he started noticing things like that? Give me 2 weeks, she said. Let me show you what real community engagement looks like. Come with me to the neighborhoods where our charity work would actually happen. Meet the people we're supposed to be helping. See what they really need instead of what you think they need. Come with you. Alex's eyebrows rose. Miss Williams, I don't have time to dash. You have time for whatever you decide is important, Zara interrupted, and Alex was so surprised by the interruption that he actually listened to what she said next. If saving the Harrison contract matters to you, then this matters. If Sterling Corporation's reputation matters to you, then this matters. If doing something good instead of just profitable matters to you at all, then this matters. The last part stung, probably because it hit closer to home than Alex wanted to admit. When had he stopped caring about doing good? When had making money become more important than making a difference? He pushed the uncomfortable thoughts away and focused on the business aspect of her proposal. 2 weeks, he said slowly. And if your approach doesn't work? Then you can fire me and go back to your original plan, Zara said simply. But if it does work, if we can create something that actually helps people and saves your contract, then you give me the respect I've earned. Alex studied her face, looking for signs of uncertainty or fear. He found none. Zara Williams was betting her career on her ability to succeed where his expensive marketing team had failed. It was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. 1 week, he said finally. You have 1 week to prove your point. Zara's smile was brilliant, transforming her entire face. Deal. As Alex watched her leave his office, he found himself wondering what he had just agreed to. In his 32 years, he had never let an employee dictate terms to him, never agreed to spend time on something that hadn't been thoroughly researched and planned by his team of experts. But there had been something in Zara's voice when she talked about the communities they were supposed to help, a passion and knowledge that none of his expensive consultants possessed. And if he was being honest with himself, which he rarely was, he was curious about the woman who had been organizing his life for 2 years while remaining almost completely invisible to him. His phone buzzed with a text message, and Alex glanced down to see a reminder about his evening plans. Dinner with Victoria Ashworth, daughter of a prominent investment banker and exactly the kind of woman his social circle expected him to eventually marry. Beautiful, well-educated, perfectly polished, and about as interesting as watching paint dry. For the first time in months, Alex found himself wanting to cancel his dinner plans. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, his mind already working through the logistics of rearranging his schedule to accommodate Zara's proposal. As the elevator descended toward the parking garage, Alex caught his reflection in the polished steel doors. He looked the same as always, expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of cold confidence that had built his empire. But something felt different, like a gear had shifted inside him without his permission. He thought about Zara's words, about communities and real impact in doing something good instead of just profitable. When had he stopped thinking about things like that? When had success become about acquisition instead of achievement? The elevator opened with a soft chime, and Alex walked toward his waiting car, his driver already holding the door open. As they pulled out into evening traffic, Alex found himself looking at the city with different eyes. Instead of seeing opportunities and investments, he found himself wondering about the people in the apartments and shops they passed. What did they need? What problems were they facing? What would real help look like to them? These were not thoughts that Alexander Sterling typically entertained. They were dangerous thoughts, the kind that led to emotional decision-making and poor business judgment. But as the city lights blurred past his window, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he had been missing something important. His phone rang, interrupting his unusual philosophical mood. Victoria's name appeared on the screen, and Alex answered with his usual polished politeness. "Good evening, Victoria." "Alex, darling, I'm so excited about dinner tonight. I have the most wonderful news about the charity gala we're planning for next month." Alex half listened as Victoria chatted about guest lists and decoration themes, her voice perfectly pleasant and completely empty of the passionate intensity he had heard in Zara's voice that afternoon. When had he started comparing other women to his assistant? When had he started noticing that his social circle was full of people who talked a lot without saying anything meaningful? "Alex, are you listening?" "Of course," he lied smoothly. "The gala sounds lovely. I was thinking we could announce our engagement that night," Victoria continued, and Alex's attention snapped back to the conversation with startling clarity. "Our engagement?" Victoria's laugh was light and musical. "Don't sound so surprised, darling. We've been dating for 8 months and everyone expects it. Mother has already started planning the wedding." Alex felt something cold settle in his stomach. 8 months of perfectly pleasant dinners and social events, 8 months of dating a woman who would look perfect on his arm and fit seamlessly into his world. 8 months of feeling absolutely nothing beyond mild appreciation for her social skills. "Victoria, I think we should discuss this in person," he said carefully. "Of course, darling. I have so many ideas to share with you." As Alex ended the call, he realized that his life had become a series of expectations and obligations that he had never actually chosen. He had built the perfect corporate empire, assembled the perfect social circle, and was apparently expected to marry the perfect woman. But when had perfect become so suffocating? The car pulled up in front of the exclusive restaurant where Victoria was waiting, and Alex sat for a moment, staring at the elegant facade. Inside, he would smile and nod and play the role of the successful businessman who had everything figured out. But something had shifted today and he wasn't sure he could pretend that everything was the same. As he walked toward the restaurant, Alex found himself thinking about tomorrow morning, about the beginning of his week with Zara Williams. For the first time in years he was facing something completely unpredictable, and instead of the anxiety that uncertainty usually brought him, he felt something that might have been anticipation. The morning sun was just beginning to paint the sky pink when Zara Williams stepped out of her apartment building, coffee in hand and determination in her step. She had spent most of the night planning their first day, mapping out locations that would give Alex Sterling the clearest picture of what real community engagement looked like. Part of her still couldn't believe he had agreed to her proposal, but she wasn't going to waste the opportunity. Her phone buzzed with a text message, "Car will pick you up at 7 a.m. sharp." Zara smiled despite herself. Even when agreeing to step outside his comfort zone, Alex Sterling couldn't help but maintain control of the logistics. A sleek black sedan was already waiting at the curb, and the driver nodded politely as he opened the door for her. "Miss Williams? Mr. Sterling is waiting at the office." 20 minutes later, Zara found herself back in the familiar marble lobby of Sterling Corporation, but everything felt different. Instead of rushing to prepare for Alex's day, she was here as something closer to an equal partner. The security guard, Marcus, gave her a knowing smile as she headed for the executive elevator. "Heard you gave the boss quite a talking to yesterday," he said quietly. "About time someone did." Alex was waiting in his office, but he looked different too. Instead of his usual Italian suit, he was wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt that somehow made him seem more human and more attractive at the same time. Zara pushed that last thought away quickly. "I wasn't sure what the dress code was for community outreach," Alex said, and there was something almost uncertain in his voice that Zara had never heard before. "You look perfect," she assured him, then felt her cheeks warm at how that sounded. "I mean appropriate. Approachable." Their eyes met for a moment, and Zara felt something spark between them that had nothing to do with business or charity work. Alex cleared his throat and looked away first. "So where are we starting this education of mine?" he asked, his voice back to its usual controlled tone. Zara pulled out her tablet and opened the schedule she had prepared. "First stop is the Riverside Community Center. It's in the neighborhood where I grew up, and they run programs for kids and families. The director, Mrs. Thompson, has been working in community service for 30 years. If anyone can show you what real impact looks like, it's her." The drive to Riverside took them through parts of the city Alex rarely saw, neighborhoods where the buildings were older and the streets narrower, where corner stores sold more necessities than luxuries. Zara watched his face as they traveled, seeing him take in details that she had grown up with: kids playing on small patches of grass between apartment buildings, elderly people sitting on stoops watching the world go by, murals painted on walls that told stories of struggle and hope. "How long did you live here?" Alex asked as they turned onto a street lined with modest houses and small businesses. "Until I was 18, Zara replied. "My mom still lives 6 blocks from here. She works 2 jobs to pay the rent on a 1-bedroom apartment, and she's proud of every day she's been able to keep it." Alex was quiet for a moment, and Zara wondered what he was thinking. His childhood had been spent in private schools and country clubs, a world away from corner groceries and community centers. The Riverside Community Center was housed in a converted school building, its brick facade painted with colorful murals depicting children reading and playing. As they walked up the front steps, Zara could hear the sounds of life inside: children laughing, adults talking, the general hum of a place where people gathered to support each other. Mrs. Thompson met them at the front desk, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and knowing eyes that seemed to see everything. She hugged Zara warmly before turning her attention to Alex. "So you're the famous Alexander Sterling," she said, extending her hand. "Zara tells me you're interested in learning about real community work." "I'm interested in understanding how to make a meaningful impact," Alex replied, shaking her hand. Zara noticed that his usual corporate smoothness had given way to something more genuine. "Good answer," Mrs. Thompson said with a smile. "Come on, let me show you what we do here." The next 2 hours were a revelation. Alex watched as Mrs. Thompson led them through programs that addressed real needs with practical solutions. The after-school tutoring program that helped kids with homework while providing them with healthy snacks. The job training center that taught practical skills to adults looking for better employment. The community garden where families could grow fresh vegetables in a neighborhood where healthy food was expensive and hard to find. But what seemed to affect Alex most were the people. The single mother who lit up when she talked about her son's improved grades since joining the tutoring program. The man in his 50s who had found steady work after completing the job training course. The elderly woman who tended the community garden and spoke about how it gave her purpose and connection. "The thing about real community work," Mrs. Thompson explained as they sat in her small office, "is that it's not about what you think people need. It's about listening to what they tell you they need and finding ways to support their own solutions." Alex was taking notes, Zara noticed with surprise. Alexander Sterling, who usually delegated note-taking to assistants, was writing down every important point Mrs. Thompson made. "Most corporate charity work fails because it's designed by people who don't understand the communities they're trying to help," Mrs. Thompson continued. "They throw money at problems without understanding the root causes, Or they create programs that look good on paper but don't work in practice. What would meaningful support look like from a company like Sterling Corporation? Alex asked. Mrs. Thompson smiled. That's the right question. Most people ask what they can give us. You're asking what we need. She pulled out a folder filled with proposals and plans. We've been dreaming of expanding our job training program to include computer skills and business training. We need updated equipment for our tutoring center. We'd love to create a scholarship program for kids who want to go to college but can't afford it. But mostly we need partners who understand that this work takes time and commitment, not just a one-time donation and a photo opportunity. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Thompson pulled Zara aside while Alex was looking at the community bulletin board. He's not what I expected, she said quietly. What do you mean? Most corporate executives who come here are looking for quick fixes and tax write-offs. He's actually listening. Actually asking the right questions. You might have found yourself a real partner. Their next stop was Roosevelt Elementary School, where Zara had arranged to meet with the principal and see the computer lab that Sterling Corporation's marketing team had proposed to upgrade. The lab was indeed outdated, with computers that were at least 10 years old and software that barely functioned. But as Principal Garcia explained the school's needs, Alex began to understand why simply donating new computers wouldn't solve the real problems. New equipment would be wonderful, Principal Garcia said, but what we really need is ongoing technical support and training for our teachers. Most of our staff learn to use computers on their own time with their own money. They need professional development to make technology meaningful in their classrooms. And what about internet access? Zara asked, knowing the answer. That's our biggest challenge, the principal admitted. Half of our students don't have reliable internet at home. They can't complete assignments or do research projects. Giving them better computers at school doesn't help if they can't continue their work at home. Alex was quiet during the drive to their third stop, and Zara could practically see him rethinking everything he thought he knew about charity work. When they arrived at the East Side Job Center, where adults were learning new skills to improve their employment prospects, Alex asked more questions than Zara had ever heard him ask about anything. How do you measure success? He asked the center director. Not by how much money we spend or how many people walk through our doors, was the reply. We measure success by how many people find stable employment, how many families improve their financial situation, how many kids see their parents achieve their goals. Real success takes years to measure, not months. By the time they stopped for lunch at a small cafe in Zara's neighborhood, Alex looked like a man whose worldview had been fundamentally shaken. They found a quiet table in the back, and for the first time all day they were alone together. This isn't what I expected, Alex said finally, stirring his coffee without drinking it. What did you expect? I don't know. Simpler problems, I guess. Issues that could be solved with the right amount of money and resources. He looked up at her, and Zara was surprised to see uncertainty in his gray eyes. Everything I saw today is complex, interconnected. These communities need partners, not just donors. Now you're beginning to understand, Zara said softly. The marketing team's plan would have been a disaster, wouldn't it? Zara nodded. A well-intentioned disaster, but a disaster nonetheless. You would have spent a lot of money, gotten some positive press coverage, and accomplished almost nothing meaningful. Alex was quiet for a long moment, looking out the cafe window at the street where Zara had grown up. Kids were walking home from school, stopping to buy candy from the corner store, laughing and calling to each other in the universal language of childhood. Tell me about your family, he said suddenly. The request surprised Zara. In 2 years of working together, Alex had never asked her a personal question. My mom raised me and my younger brother by herself, Zara said carefully. She worked as a nursing assistant during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. She never missed a parent-teacher conference or a school play, even when she was exhausted. And your father? He left when I was 8. My mom never talked badly about him, just said that some people aren't built for family responsibility. Zara met Alex's eyes. She taught me that actions matter more than words, that character is shown through how you treat people when no one is watching. Alex looked uncomfortable, and Zara wondered if he was thinking about how he had treated her and other employees over the years. Is that why you stayed? He asked. At Sterling Corporation, I mean. Despite everything. Zara considered the question carefully. I stayed because I needed the job and because I believed I could make a difference. Maybe not a big difference, but some difference. And because I saw glimpses of something better in you, even when you were being impossible. Glimpses of what? Someone who actually cared about doing the right thing, buried under all that corporate armor. Zara smiled slightly. Today proved I was right. Their eyes met across the small table, and Zara felt that spark again, stronger this time. Alex reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers as he touched her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For today. For pushing me to see things I've been ignoring." Before Zara could respond, his phone rang, shattering the moment. Alex glanced at the screen and his expression shifted back to business mode. "I have to take this," he said apologetically. "It's Robert Harrison." As Alex stepped outside to take the call, Zara sat alone in the cafe, her heart racing from the brief touch of his hand and the look in his eyes. She was getting involved with her boss, emotionally if not romantically, and that was dangerous territory. But watching him today, seeing him really listen and learn, had shown her a side of Alexander Sterling she hadn't known existed. When Alex returned, his expression was serious. "Harrison wants to meet next week about the charity initiative," he said. "He's heard rumors that we're developing something innovative, and he wants details." "Rumors?" Zara raised an eyebrow. Alex had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have mentioned to a few people that we were taking a more hands-on approach to community engagement. I wanted to buy us some time." "So no pressure then," Zara said dryly, but she was smiling. "None at all," Alex replied, and for the first time since she had known him, his smile was completely genuine. The rain started during their visit to the fourth location of the day, a youth center that ran after-school programs in one of the city's most challenging neighborhoods. What began as a light drizzle quickly turned into a downpour that had Alex Sterling standing under a narrow awning with Zara Williams, watching water cascade off the roof in sheets. "My car can't get down this street," Alex said, checking his phone. "The driver says there's flooding at both ends of the block." Zara looked around the familiar neighborhood, then pointed to a small cafe across the street. "Rosa's place has been here for 20 years. We can wait it out there." They ran through the rain, Alex's expensive shoes splashing through puddles that probably cost more to clean than most people made in a day. By the time they reached Rosa's cafe, they were both soaked and laughing in a way that surprised them both. "Alexander Sterling laughing in the rain," Zara said as they shook water from their clothes. "I should take a picture. No one would believe it." The cafe was warm and crowded, filled with the kind of people Alex never encountered in his usual world. Construction workers grabbing coffee on their break, mothers with small children sharing pastries, elderly men playing dominoes in the corner. The walls were covered with family photos and community announcements, and the smell of fresh bread and strong coffee filled the air. Rosa herself, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands, greeted Zara with a hug and looked at Alex with curious but welcoming eyes. "Zara Mija, you're soaked. And who is this handsome man you've brought to my cafe?" "Rosa, this is my boss, Alex Sterling." "Alex, this is Rosa Martinez. She makes the best Cuban coffee in the city." Rosa studied Alex with the knowing look of someone who had seen every type of person walk through her doors. "Boss, huh? He better be treating you right or he'll answer to me." Alex found himself charmed by Rosa's direct warmth, so different from the polished pleasantries of his usual social interactions. "I'm learning that Zara deserves better treatment than I've given her," he said honestly. "Good answer," Rosa said with approval. "Now sit both of you. I'll bring you coffee and something to eat while you wait for the rain to stop." They found a small table near the window, and Alex looked around the cafe with genuine interest. Everything about it was the opposite of his usual restaurants: mismatched chairs, worn wooden tables, decorations that had been collected over years rather than chosen by a designer. But there was something about the atmosphere that felt more real than all the expensive establishments he frequented. "Tell me about this place," he said as Rosa brought them steaming cups of coffee and plates of fresh pastries. "Rosa and her husband opened this cafe when I was in high school," Zara explained. "They came here from Cuba with nothing but determination and her grandmother's recipes. This place became like a community center. Somewhere people could gather, kids could do homework, families could celebrate milestones." Alex watched as Rosa moved through the cafe, greeting everyone by name, asking about their families, their jobs, their lives. She stopped to help a young boy with his math homework, refilled an elderly woman's coffee without being asked, and listened patiently as a worried mother talked about her teenager's behavior. "She knows everyone," Alex observed. "That's what real community looks like," Zara said. "People taking care of each other, creating connections that matter." Rosa has probably helped more families in this neighborhood than most formal social programs. As if summoned by their conversation, Rosa appeared at their table with more coffee. "You two are talking very seriously," she said, settling into an empty chair with the ease of someone comfortable in her own space. What kind of business brings a man in expensive clothes to my neighborhood? Alex found himself explaining their charity project, but as he talked, he realized how different his description sounded now compared to a week ago. Instead of talking about corporate image and tax benefits, he found himself discussing community needs and long-term partnerships. Rosa listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed she understood both the challenges and the opportunities better than most of the consultants Alex had hired over the years. The problem with most charity work, Rosa said finally, is that it comes from guilt instead of understanding. Rich people want to feel better about having so much, so they throw money at poor people and expect gratitude. But charity that comes from guilt doesn't last, and it doesn't really help. What does help? Alex asked, genuinely curious. Partnership. Respect. Understanding that poor doesn't mean stupid, and that people in struggling communities have their own wisdom, their own solutions. The best help is the kind that supports what people are already doing, not the kind that tries to replace it. Alex was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. I think I've been approaching this all wrong. Maybe, Rosa said gently. But you're here listening, learning. That's more than most people in your position ever do. The rain continued to fall, and the cafe filled with the comfortable sounds of community life. Alex found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years, listening to conversations in Spanish and English, watching children color at a nearby table while their mothers chatted, observing the easy familiarity between people who had built relationships over time. This is nice, he admitted to Zara. What is this? Being somewhere real with real people. My usual world is so controlled, predictable. Everyone's saying what they think I want to hear. Zara studied his face, seeing something vulnerable there that she had never seen before. What's your usual world like? I mean outside of work? Alex considered the question, realizing he couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him something personal that wasn't related to business or social obligations. Lonely, he said finally, the honesty surprising him. I have acquaintances, business associates, people I date for social reasons. But I can't remember the last time I had a conversation like this, where someone was interested in what I thought rather than what I could do for them. That sounds exhausting. It is. I built walls to protect myself from people who wanted to use me, but somewhere along the way the walls got so high that they kept everyone out, even people who might actually care. Zara felt her heart soften toward this man who was showing her sides of himself she was sure few people ever saw. Is that why you're so difficult at work? To keep people at a distance. Alex winced slightly. Probably. If I treated you like a human being instead of an employee, I might have to acknowledge that you're smarter than half my board of directors and more dedicated than anyone I've ever worked with. I am smarter than half your board of directors, Zara said with a smile. You're smarter than all of them, Alex replied, and the sincerity in his voice made Zara's pulse quicken. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the rain and the gentle sounds of the cafe around them. Alex found himself studying Zara's face, noticing things he had somehow missed in 2 years of working together. The way her eyes lit up when she smiled. The graceful way she moved her hands when she talked. The quiet strength that radiated from her even in relaxed moments like this. Can I ask you something? Zara said suddenly. Of course. What made you so angry about people needing help? Because that's what it seems like sometimes, like you resent the idea that anyone might need assistance. Alex was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee cup. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than Zara had ever heard it. My father built Sterling Corporation from nothing, but he was never home. He was always working, always chasing the next deal, the next acquisition. My mother used to say he was providing for us, but really he was hiding from us. From the mess of human relationships and emotions. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. When he died, I was 25 and completely unprepared to run a company. Everyone expected me to fail. Employees, competitors, even some family members. I survived by becoming harder than he ever was, more focused, more ruthless. I told myself that emotional connections were weaknesses I couldn't afford. But they're not weaknesses, Zara said gently. They're what makes success meaningful. I'm starting to understand that, Alex admitted. Today, watching you interact with people, seeing how much you care about making a real difference, I realized I've been measuring success all wrong. The rain was finally beginning to ease, and Alex could see his driver waiting across the street. But for the first time in his adult life, he didn't want to return to his scheduled, controlled world. He wanted to stay in this warm cafe with Zara, talking about things that mattered instead of things that merely made money. We should go, Zara said reluctantly, noticing the car. You probably have meetings this afternoon. Alex checked his phone and saw 3 missed calls from his secretary and a text message from Victoria about their dinner plans. The thought of returning to that world, all politeness and pretense and careful emotional distance, felt suffocating. "Actually," he said, making a decision that surprised him, "I'm canceling the rest of my day. Would you show me more of your neighborhood? I want to understand where you came from." Zara's smile was radiant. "I'd love to." As they prepared to leave Rosa's cafe, the older woman pressed a container of pastries into Zara's hands. "For your mother," she said. "And bring your boss back sometime. I like a man who's not afraid to learn new things." Walking through Zara's neighborhood in the aftermath of the rain, Alex saw the community through completely different eyes. Instead of problems to be solved or image opportunities to be leveraged, he saw people with stories, dreams, struggles, and strengths. He saw the beauty in murals painted on brick walls, the ingenuity in community gardens carved from empty lots, the resilience in small businesses that served their neighbors with pride and care. "Thank you," he said as they walked toward the subway station, since his driver couldn't navigate the narrow streets. "For what?" "For showing me this. For showing me what I've been missing." Alex stopped walking and turned to face her. "Zara, I owe you an apology. Not just for yesterday, but for 2 years of treating you like you didn't matter when you were the most important person in my professional life." "Alex." Zara started, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. You've made my life work smoothly, covered for my mistakes, and apparently been the only person brave enough to tell me the truth. I've been an arrogant fool and I'm sorry." Standing there in the gentle aftermath of the storm, with the city smell of rain and possibility around them, Zara felt something shift between them. This wasn't her boss apologizing to his assistant. This was one person recognizing another person's worth, one human being acknowledging another's humanity. "Apology accepted," she said softly. "But Alex, this is just the beginning. If we're really going to make this charity project work, you're going to have to stay committed even when it gets complicated." "I'm committed," Alex said, and looking into his eyes, Zara believed him. As they descended into the subway station, Alex Sterling experienced something entirely new, riding public transportation while genuinely excited about what tomorrow might bring. For the first time in years, his future felt unpredictable, and instead of anxiety, that uncertainty filled him with anticipation. Zara Williams stood in front of her mother's apartment building, keys in hand, trying to gather the courage to invite Alexander Sterling inside. It was their 4th day working together, and somehow their professional partnership had evolved into something that felt dangerously close to friendship. Or maybe something more than friendship, though Zara was trying not to think about that. "You don't have to come up," she said, glancing at Alex, who was studying the modest brick building with curious rather than judgmental eyes. "I just need to check on my mom and drop off some groceries." "I'd like to meet her," Alex said simply. "If that's okay with you." The request surprised Zara, but she found herself nodding. "Okay, but fair warning, my mother has no filter when it comes to protecting her children. She might interrogate you." "I think I can handle one protective mother," Alex said with a smile. They climbed 3 flights of stairs to apartment 3B, the hallway smelling of cooking spices and floor cleaner. Zara knocked softly before using her key. "Mama, it's me," she called out as they entered. The apartment was small but immaculate, filled with family photos and plants that turned every available surface into a garden. Diane Williams emerged from the kitchen, a woman in her 50s who shared Zara's warm brown eyes and graceful bearing, though her face showed the lines of someone who had worked hard for everything she had. "Baby girl," Diane said, embracing Zara warmly before turning curious eyes to Alex. "And who is this?" "Mama, this is Alex Sterling, my boss." "Alex, this is my mother, Diane Williams." Diane studied Alex with the kind of thorough assessment that only mothers can perform, taking in his expensive clothes, his nervous posture, and the way he looked at her daughter. "So you're the famous Alexander Sterling," she said, not extending her hand. "The one who's been working my daughter like she's 2 people instead of 1. Alex had faced hostile business negotiations and intimidating board meetings, but something about Diane Williams' direct gaze made him feel like a teenager caught misbehaving. "Mrs. Williams, I owe you an apology," he said. "I haven't treated Zara with the respect she deserves, and I'm working to change that." Diane circled him slowly, like a general inspecting troops. "You know, she comes home exhausted most nights, stays up late finishing work you could have planned better, skips meals because you don't give her time to eat properly." "Mama," Zara said, embarrassed, but Diane held up a hand. "I'm not finished. My daughter is brilliant, dedicated, and has more integrity in her little finger than most CEOs have in their whole body. If you can't see that, then you're either blind or stupid, and you don't look stupid. Alex felt his cheeks warm under her scrutiny. You're absolutely right. Zara is the most capable person I've ever worked with, and I've taken her for granted. Good answer, Diane said, finally offering him a seat on the small couch. Now, what are your intentions regarding my daughter's career? Because if you're just playing games with her to make yourself feel better about being a bad boss, we're going to have problems. Mama, please, Zara said, mortified by her mother's directness. But Alex found himself respecting Diane's protectiveness. Mrs. Williams, your daughter is helping me understand how to build something meaningful instead of just profitable. She's teaching me about real community engagement, and she's probably saving my biggest client relationship in the process. My intention is to make sure she gets the recognition and opportunities she's earned. Diane studied him for another long moment, then nodded approvingly. All right then. You hungry? I made enough food for an army as usual. Over dinner around the small kitchen table, Alex learned more about Zara's background than he had in 2 years of working together. He heard about her straight-A report cards that Diane had proudly displayed on the refrigerator, about the 3 jobs she had worked to put herself through college, about the scholarship applications she had written by hand because they couldn't afford a computer. She wanted to be a social worker at first, Diane said, passing Alex another serving of her incredible mac and cheese. But the pay wasn't enough to help with my medical bills, so she switched to business. Said she was going to change the corporate world from the inside. Medical bills? Alex asked gently. Diane's expression tightened slightly. Diabetes and high blood pressure. Nothing too serious if you can afford the medication and regular doctor visits. But on a nursing assistant's salary? She shrugged. Zara helps when she can, but I don't like taking money from my children. Alex glanced at Zara, seeing the worry in her eyes that she tried to hide. Suddenly her dedication to her job, her willingness to work long hours and take on extra responsibilities, made complete sense. She wasn't just building a career, she was taking care of her family. How much do your medications cost? Alex asked quietly. Alex, don't, Zara said quickly. About $400 a month, Diane said, ignoring her daughter's warning look. More when I need tests or have to see specialists. Alex did quick math in his head. Zara's salary, while good for someone her age, wouldn't leave much after taxes, rent, and helping with her mother's medical expenses. No wonder she had never quit despite his impossible demands, she couldn't afford to. After dinner, while Diane was showing Alex her photo albums filled with pictures of Zara's achievements, Zara stepped onto the small balcony that overlooked the courtyard. Alex found her there a few minutes later, staring up at the stars that were barely visible through the city lights. Your mother is amazing, he said, joining her at the railing. She's been my hero my whole life, Zara replied. She worked 16-hour days to keep us fed and housed, never missed a school event, somehow found money for my college application fees. I owe her everything. Is that why you stayed at Sterling Corporation? To help with her medical bills? Zara was quiet for a moment. Partly. But also because I believed I could make a difference, even if it was just making one company a little more humane. Alex felt something tighten in his chest, guilt, admiration, and something deeper that he wasn't ready to name. Zara, I need to tell you something. She turned to look at him, seeing something serious in his expression. 2 years ago, when you first started working for me, I received 3 other applications for executive assistant positions. All from people with more experience, better connections, recommendations from important families. Zara's stomach dropped. She had always wondered how she had gotten the job, had assumed her qualifications had been enough. I chose you because you were the only applicant who wrote a cover letter about wanting to help build something meaningful instead of just advancing your own career. You talked about corporate responsibility and ethical business practices. My board members thought you were naive, but something about your letter made me curious. Curious about what? About whether someone like you could survive in a world like mine. Whether idealism could coexist with ambition. Alex turned to face her fully. I think I was testing you, seeing how long it would take for the corporate world to break your spirit. Zara felt tears prick her eyes, not sure if they were from hurt or anger. So I was an experiment to you? At first, Alex admitted, his voice heavy with regret. But somewhere along the way you became essential. Not just to my work but to who I am. You never lost your integrity, never stopped caring about doing the right thing. You made me remember why I wanted to build a business in the first place. Which was to prove that success didn't have to come at the expense of decency. that you could build something profitable and meaningful at the same time. Alex ran a hand through his hair. My father built his empire by treating people like disposable resources. I swore I would be different, but I became worse than he ever was. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of his confession hanging between them. Finally Zara spoke. Alex, why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth. Because I'm tired of pretending that what we're doing this week is just about saving a client relationship. Because working with you, really working with you instead of just giving you orders, has reminded me who I wanted to be before I got lost in spreadsheets and board meetings. Zara felt her heart racing. There was something in Alex's voice, in the way he was looking at her, that suggested they were talking about more than just business partnerships. What are you saying? I'm saying that you've changed me, Zara. These past few days, seeing the world through your eyes, remembering what it feels like to care about something bigger than profit margins. I haven't felt this alive in years. Before Zara could respond, Diane's voice called from inside the apartment. Zara, honey, bring Alex back in here. I want to show him your high school graduation pictures. The moment was broken, but as they headed back inside, Alex caught Zara's hand gently. We should talk more about this, he said quietly. About what's happening between us. Zara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Because something was definitely happening between them, something that went far beyond boss and employee, far beyond their charity project. And for the first time in her adult life, Zara Williams was falling for someone who might actually fall back. As they spent the rest of the evening looking at family photos and listening to Diane's stories, Alex found himself imagining what it would be like to be part of this kind of family, warm, supportive, built on love instead of obligation. And watching Zara laugh with her mother, seeing the genuine affection between them, he realized he was falling in love with more than just a brilliant, beautiful woman. He was falling in love with the idea of a life that had meaning beyond money, connection beyond networking, success that was measured in more than just numbers. When it was time to leave, Diane hugged Alex goodbye with surprising warmth. You take care of my daughter, she said firmly. And I don't just mean at work. As they walked back toward the subway station, Alex and Zara were both quiet, lost in their own thoughts about what the evening had revealed and what it might mean for their future. But for the first time since this unlikely partnership began, both of them were thinking less about charity projects and client relationships and more about the possibility that they had found something neither of them had been looking for: each other. The Sterling Corporation boardroom had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. Instead of the usual cast of executives in expensive suits discussing profit margins and market shares, the polished table was surrounded by community leaders, social workers and local business owners who had been invited to discuss the company's evolving charity initiative. Alex Sterling sat at the head of the table, but for the first time in his career, he wasn't dominating the conversation. Instead, he was listening intently as Mrs. Thompson from the Riverside Community Center explained the challenges of sustaining long-term programs without consistent support. The problem with most corporate charity work, she was saying, is that companies want immediate, measurable results. But real community change takes years, sometimes decades. It requires patience and commitment that extends beyond quarterly reports. Zara, sitting to Alex's right with her tablet full of notes and research, watched him absorb every word. Over the past week, she had seen him transform from someone who viewed charity as a business expense into someone who genuinely wanted to understand how to make a difference. What if we structured our support differently? Alex asked, leaning forward. Instead of one-time donations or annual grants, what if Sterling Corporation committed to 5-year partnerships with specific measurable goals and regular check-ins? That would be revolutionary, said Miguel Santos, who ran a job training program in East Harbor. Most companies promise long-term support but disappear after the first year when they don't see immediate results. Zara felt a surge of pride watching Alex engage with these community leaders as equals rather than beneficiaries of his largesse. This was the man she had glimpsed beneath the corporate armor, the one who had been buried under years of emotional detachment and business cynicism. After the meeting, as the community leaders filed out with promises to submit detailed proposals, Alex's usual board members lingered. Their expressions ranged from confused to openly skeptical. Alex, said Richard Pemberton, the company's CFO and Alex's longtime friend from business school, can we talk privately about this new direction? Alex nodded toward his office, and Zara started to gather her materials to leave them to their executive discussion. Zara, please stay, Alex said. Your input on this conversation will be valuable. The simple request sent a clear message to everyone in the room. Zara Williams was no longer just an assistant taking notes. She was a partner in this initiative, someone whose opinion Alex valued and respected. In Alex's office, Richard and two other board members settled into chairs while Alex remained standing by the windows, a position that usually indicated he was preparing to make an announcement rather than engage in discussion. "Alex, what exactly are we doing here?" Richard asked bluntly. "This community outreach thing is fine for public relations, but you're talking about long-term financial commitments with no guaranteed return on investment." "The return on investment is our relationship with Harrison Industries and other clients who care about corporate responsibility," Alex replied calmly. "But is it worth completely restructuring our charitable giving strategy?" asked Patricia Vance, the head of marketing. "We could accomplish the same PR goals with much less effort and expense." Alex was quiet for a moment, and Zara could see him weighing his words carefully. The old Alex would have made a unilateral decision and expected everyone to fall in line. But she watched him choose a different approach. "2 weeks ago, I would have agreed with you," he said finally. "I saw charity work as a necessary business expense, something we did to improve our image and satisfy client expectations. But I've learned something important: sustainable business success requires more than just profit maximization." "Alex," Richard said with the tone of someone addressing a friend who had lost his way, "since when do you care about sustainable business practices beyond what's legally required?" "Since I realized that my father's approach to business success was fundamentally flawed," Alex replied, and Zara saw surprise flicker across the other executives' faces. Alex rarely mentioned his father, and never critically. "Your father built this company into what it is today," Patricia said carefully. "My father built a profitable company, but he also built one that people tolerate rather than respect. Our employee turnover rate is 30% higher than industry standard. Our client satisfaction scores are adequate but not exceptional. We make money but we don't inspire loyalty or trust." Alex moved away from the window and sat down, his posture more relaxed than his usual boardroom stance. "The community leaders who were here today talked about partnership, about building relationships that create mutual benefit over time. That's a business model we should be applying to all our relationships, with employees, clients, and the communities where we operate." Richard exchanged glances with Patricia before speaking. "And you think Miss Williams is qualified to advise us on major strategic decisions?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Zara felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment and anger. But before she could respond, Alex's voice cut through the tension with deadly quiet intensity. "Zara Williams has a better understanding of sustainable business practices and stakeholder relationships than anyone else in this room," he said, his gray eyes fixed on Richard with unmistakable warning. "She's also the reason our charity initiative has any chance of success. If you have concerns about her qualifications, I'd be happy to review her contributions to this company over the past 2 years." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken dynamics. Zara realized that Alex was not just defending her professionally, he was drawing a line that his longtime colleagues would have to respect if they wanted to maintain their relationships with him. "Of course," Richard said quickly. "I didn't mean to question Miss Williams' capabilities. I'm just concerned about the scope of changes you're proposing." "The changes are necessary," Alex said simply. "Sterling Corporation has been successful, but we haven't been excellent. Excellence requires caring about more than just quarterly profits." After the other executives left, Alex and Zara were alone in his office. The afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, casting everything in golden light that made the usually cold space feel warm and alive. "You didn't have to defend me like that," Zara said quietly. "Yes, I did." Alex moved closer to her, and Zara felt her pulse quicken. "Zara, what's happening between us is changing how I see everything: business, success, what I want my life to look like." "Alex, I know this is complicated. I know there are professional boundaries and power dynamics we need to consider. But I also know that I've never met anyone who challenges me the way you do, who makes me want to be better than I am." Zara felt her heart racing. They were standing close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his light eyes, close enough to catch the scent of his cologne mixed with something that was purely him. "This is dangerous territory," she said softly. "I know. But Zara, these past few days working with you as a partner instead of just an employee, I've remembered what it feels like to be excited about work, to care about outcomes beyond profit margins. You've reminded me who I wanted to be before I got lost in corporate politics and family expectations." Before Zara could respond, Alex's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and his expression shifted slightly. "Victoria," he said, showing Zara the screen. "She wants to have dinner tonight to discuss wedding plans." "Wedding plans?" Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach. Alex ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly tired. She's decided we should get engaged. Her family and mine have been expecting it for months. It makes sense on paper, she's from the right social circle, understands the business world, would fit seamlessly into my life. And what do you want? Zara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Alex looked at her for a long moment, his eyes holding an intensity that made her feel like he was seeing straight through to her soul. I want something real, he said finally. I want to care about someone who challenges me, someone who makes me laugh, someone who sees the world differently than I do. I want to build something meaningful with someone who believes in more than just success. The words hung between them, laden with implications that neither of them was quite ready to voice directly. But the message was clear. Victoria Ashworth represented everything Alex was supposed to want, while Zara represented everything he actually wanted. What are you going to tell her? Zara asked. The truth. That I'm not ready for marriage and that we want different things from life. She's not going to take that well. Probably not, Alex agreed. But I'm tired of living my life according to other people's expectations. These past few days with you have shown me what it feels like to make choices based on what actually matters to me. As Alex prepared to leave for what would undoubtedly be a difficult conversation with Victoria, Zara found herself hoping that his transformation was real and lasting, not just the temporary result of their intense week together. Because despite all her professional caution and personal reservations, she was falling for Alexander Sterling, not the billionaire CEO, but the man who listened to community leaders with genuine respect, who defended her worth to his board members, who was brave enough to question everything he had built in pursuit of something better. That evening, as Alex sat across from Victoria in their usual expensive restaurant, he realized that the woman he had been dating for 8 months felt like a stranger. Her conversation about wedding venues and guest lists seemed to be happening in a different language, one he no longer spoke fluently. Alex, you seem distracted, Victoria said, pausing in her description of flower arrangements. Is everything all right? Alex looked at her, beautiful, polished, perfectly appropriate, and felt nothing but a vague sense of sadness for the time they had both wasted pretending they were building towards something meaningful. Victoria, we need to talk, he said gently. And as he began the conversation that would officially end one chapter of his life, Alex found himself thinking about Zara Williams and the possibility that the most important chapter might just be beginning. The attack came on a Tuesday morning, swift and brutal in the way that corporate warfare often was. Zara arrived at the office to find Alex already there, his face grim as he stared at his computer screen. Without looking up, he gestured for her to close the door behind her. We have a problem, he said, turning the monitor so she could see the headline that dominated the business news website. Sterling Corporation's charity scam, billionaire CEO uses poor communities for PR stunt. Zara's stomach dropped as she read the article, which painted their community outreach initiative as a cynical ploy designed to win back public favor after years of ruthless business practices. The piece quoted anonymous sources, who claimed that Alex had only started the charity work to secure the Harrison Industries contract, and that he had no real intention of following through on long-term commitments. But what made the article truly damaging was its personal attacks on Zara herself, describing her as an unqualified assistant who has somehow convinced her boss to play social worker, and suggesting that their partnership was inappropriate in ways that made Zara's cheeks burn with anger and humiliation. How did they get this information? Zara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Alex's expression was dark with barely controlled anger. Richard Pemberton. He's been questioning my decisions since our board meeting last week, and apparently he decided to take his concerns to the press. Your own CFO leaked this story? Former CFO, Alex corrected grimly. I just accepted his resignation, though he tried to frame it as concern for the company's direction. Zara sank into the chair across from his desk, her mind racing through the implications. Alex, this could destroy everything we've been working toward. The community leaders who trusted us, the Harrison Industries meeting, all of it. I know. Alex came around the desk and sat in the chair next to hers, his usual executive distance replaced by something more intimate and urgent. Zara, there's something else. I received a job offer this morning that you need to know about. What kind of job offer? Harrison Industries. Robert Harrison called me personally to offer you a position as their Director of Community Relations. The salary is twice what you're making here, plus benefits and a signing bonus that would cover your mother's medical expenses for the next 5 years. Zara felt the world tilt slightly. He offered me a job? Apparently word has gotten around about your work on our charity initiative. Harrison was impressed by the research and community connections you've developed. He said he's been looking for someone with your combination of business skills and genuine community knowledge. The offer was everything Zara had dreamed of professionally: recognition, financial security, the chance to do meaningful work without having to navigate corporate politics or worry about her mother's medical bills. It was also a way out of the increasingly complicated situation with Alex, a clean break from feelings that were becoming harder to ignore. "When does he need an answer?" she asked quietly. "End of the week." They sat in silence for a moment, both understanding what the offer meant. Zara could take the job and build the career she had always wanted, free from the complications of working for a man she was falling in love with. Alex would be left to handle the media crisis and salvage what remained of Sterling Corporation's reputation. "You should take it," Alex said finally, though his voice suggested the words cost him something. "Should I?" "It's everything you've worked for. Financial security for you and your mother, professional recognition, the chance to do the kind of community work you're passionate about. And what about our project? What about the commitments we've made to the community centers and schools?" Alex's smile was sad but genuine. "You've taught me enough that I can continue the work even if I can't do it as well as you would. The foundation you've built is solid." Before Zara could respond, Alex's assistant knocked on the door with news that made their personal crisis seem temporarily insignificant. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Mrs. Thompson from the Riverside Community Center is here. She says it's urgent." Mrs. Thompson entered the office looking more upset than Zara had ever seen her, clutching a newspaper and wearing the expression of someone who had been personally betrayed. "Is it true?" she asked without preamble, holding up the damning article. "Are you using our communities as some kind of publicity stunt?" "Mrs. Thompson, please sit down," Alex said gently. "I understand why you're upset and I want to explain what's really happening." But Mrs. Thompson remained standing, her eyes fixed on Alex with a mixture of disappointment and anger. "I trusted you. We all trusted you. I brought you into our spaces, introduced you to our people, shared our struggles and our dreams. If this was all just a game to you?" "It wasn't a game," Zara said firmly, standing up to face the woman who had become like a mentor to her. "Mrs. Thompson, I know how this looks, but everything Alex learned about community work, he learned because he genuinely wanted to understand. The changes in him, in his approach to business, that's real. Then how do you explain this article? How do you explain quotes from his own employees saying the whole thing was calculated?" Alex stood as well, his face showing the weight of having his motives questioned by someone whose respect he had come to value deeply. "Mrs. Thompson, I can't deny that this initiative began as a business necessity. We needed to improve our corporate image to maintain important client relationships. But what happened over the past 2 weeks, working with Zara and meeting people like you, that changed everything for me." "Changed everything how?" Alex was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I built my career on the belief that business success required emotional detachment, that caring about people made you weak and vulnerable. But watching Zara work with your community, seeing the difference that genuine partnerships can make, I realized I've been measuring success all wrong." Mrs. Thompson's expression softened slightly, but she wasn't ready to be convinced. "Pretty words, Mr. Sterling. But how do I know this isn't just more manipulation? How do I know you won't disappear as soon as the media attention dies down?" "Because I'm going to prove it to you," Alex said simply. "The commitments we made to your community center, to Roosevelt Elementary, to all the programs we discussed, I'm honoring every single one of them, regardless of what happens with our public image or our client relationships. Even if it costs you the Harrison Industries contract?" "Even then." Mrs. Thompson studied his face for a long moment, then turned to Zara. "And what about you, honey? Are you going to stick around to make sure he keeps his promises?" The question hung in the air, and Zara felt both Alex and Mrs. Thompson watching her intently. This was the moment of truth. Would she take the safe path with Harrison Industries, or would she stay and fight for what they had built together? "Mrs. Thompson," Zara said slowly, "I believe in what we're doing here. I believe that Alex has genuinely changed, and I believe that Sterling Corporation can become the kind of company that creates real positive impact. So yes, I'm staying." As she said the words, Zara felt Alex's sharp intake of breath beside her. She hadn't told him about her decision until this moment, hadn't even been completely sure of it herself until Mrs. Thompson asked the question directly. "All right then," Mrs. Thompson said, settling into her chair with the air of someone prepared to give them one more chance. "But I'm going to be watching closely. One sign that this is all corporate theater, and I'm pulling my community's cooperation." "Understood," Alex said. "And Mrs. Thompson?" Thank you for giving us the opportunity to prove ourselves. After Mrs. Thompson left, Alex and Zara found themselves alone again, the weight of her decision settling between them. You turned down the Harrison Industries job, Alex said quietly. I did. Why? Zara looked at him, seeing the vulnerability beneath his usual confident exterior. Because I believe in what we're building here. Because I think you really are changing and I want to be part of that transformation. And because I care about you, Alex. Not just as my boss but as a person. These past 2 weeks, working with you as a partner instead of an employee, seeing you really listen and learn and grow, I've fallen for the man you're becoming. Alex moved closer to her, his eyes intense with emotion. Zara, you need to understand what you're choosing. This media attack won't be the last one. There will be more criticism, more challenges to what we're doing. And our relationship, whatever it becomes, will be scrutinized and questioned. I know, Zara said simply. But I also know that the best things in life require courage and commitment. You taught me that, actually, by being brave enough to question everything you thought you knew about success. Alex reached out and took her hands, his touch sending warmth through her entire body. I love you, he said, the words coming out like a confession he couldn't hold back any longer. I love your passion, your integrity, your courage. I love the way you see the world and the way you make me want to be better than I am. I love you too, Zara replied, and saying the words felt like stepping off a cliff into something wonderful and terrifying. Before either of them could say anything else, Alex's phone rang with news that would test their new relationship and their professional partnership in ways they hadn't anticipated. Mr. Sterling? His assistant's voice was tight with anxiety. Robert Harrison is here. He says he needs to speak with you immediately about the article in this morning's news. Alex and Zara looked at each other, both understanding that the next hour would determine not just their professional future, but the future of everything they had built together. The real test wasn't the media attack or the corporate betrayal, it was whether their partnership was strong enough to survive the challenges that came with choosing love over convenience, integrity over image, and meaningful work over safe profits. Send him in, Alex said, squeezing Zara's hands once before releasing them. Let's show him what real partnership looks like. Robert Harrison was not what Alex had expected. Instead of the polished corporate executive he had imagined, Harrison Industries CEO was a man in his 60s with work-worn hands and intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He entered Alex's office with the confident stride of someone who had built his empire from the ground up and wasn't impressed by fancy furniture or expensive art. Mr. Sterling, Harrison said, shaking Alex's hand with a grip that was firm but not aggressive. Miss Williams, I presume? He turned to Zara with a smile that seemed genuinely warm. I've heard impressive things about your work. Mr. Harrison, Alex began, I'm sure you're here about the article in this morning's. Actually, I'm here because of what I learned when I investigated the claims in that article, Harrison interrupted, settling into his chair with the ease of someone comfortable in any environment. It's amazing what you can discover when you actually talk to people instead of just reading gossip. Alex and Zara exchanged glances, not sure what to expect. I spent yesterday afternoon visiting the Riverside Community Center and Roosevelt Elementary School, Harrison continued. I spoke with Mrs. Thompson, Principal Garcia, and several other community leaders about their experiences with Sterling Corporation's new initiative. And what did they tell you? Zara asked, her voice carefully neutral. Harrison's smile grew wider. They told me that for the first time in decades, they've encountered a corporate partnership that actually listens to what communities need instead of imposing solutions from the outside. They told me about a CEO who spent hours learning about real problems and an assistant who has become one of the most effective community advocates they've ever worked with. Alex felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. So you don't believe the claims in the article? Mr. Sterling, I built my company by learning to distinguish between people who talk about values and people who live them. The community leaders I spoke with yesterday made it very clear which category you and Miss Williams fall into. Harrison pulled out a tablet and opened it to a series of photos. Mrs. Thompson showed me these pictures from your visits to the community center. In one of them, you're sitting on the floor helping a 7-year-old with his homework. In another, you're in the community garden, actually helping plant vegetables while listening to residents talk about food security. The photos showed a side of Alex that Zara had watched emerge over the past weeks. Relaxed, genuinely engaged, more interested in learning than in being seen learning. These aren't staged photo opportunities, Harrison continued. These are candid shots of someone who forgot to maintain his executive image because he was too busy caring about what he was learning. Mr. Harrison, Alex said carefully, I want to be completely honest with you about how this initiative started. It did begin as a response to concerns about Sterling Corporation's public image, including our relationship with your company. I know, Harrison replied simply. Mrs. Thompson told me. She also told me that your motivations changed as you learned more about the communities you were working with. The question is, what are your motivations now? Alex looked at Zara, drawing strength from her presence, before answering with complete honesty. My motivation now is to build a company that creates value for everyone it touches, employees, clients, and communities. I want Sterling Corporation to be known for excellence that includes ethical behavior and social responsibility, not in spite of those things but because of them. And what role does Miss Williams play in this vision? The question seemed loaded with meaning, and Alex realized that Harrison had probably heard rumors about their developing relationship. Zara is the most talented community relations professional I've ever encountered, Alex said firmly. She's also becoming my partner in reshaping how Sterling Corporation approaches business relationships. Her insights and expertise are essential to everything we're building. Harrison nodded approvingly. Good answer. Miss Williams, I offered you a position with my company. Are you still considering it? Zara felt Alex tense beside her, but her answer came without hesitation. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Harrison, but I'm committed to the work we're doing at Sterling Corporation. I believe we can accomplish something truly meaningful here. Even better answer, Harrison said, closing his tablet and sitting back in his chair. Now, let me tell you why I'm really here. He paused for a moment, seeming to gather his thoughts. 30 years ago, I was where you are now, Mr. Sterling. Successful, wealthy, respected in business circles, but completely disconnected from any sense of purpose beyond profit. My wake-up call came when my teenage daughter asked me what I was proud of besides making money. I couldn't answer her. Alex felt the words hit him with uncomfortable accuracy. I spent the next decade learning how to build a company that could be profitable and socially responsible at the same time. It wasn't easy, and it required changing almost everything about how I approached business relationships. But it was the best decision I ever made, professionally and personally. Harrison leaned forward, his expression becoming more intense. What you're attempting at Sterling Corporation is exactly what the business world needs more of: leaders who understand that long-term success requires stakeholder value, not just shareholder value. The community leaders I spoke with yesterday believe you're serious about this transformation. The question is, are you prepared for how difficult it's going to be? What do you mean? Zara asked. You're going to face resistance from other executives who think social responsibility is expensive idealism. You're going to be criticized by competitors who profit from the old way of doing business. You're going to have to make decisions that prioritize long-term value over short-term profits, and that's going to test your resolve in ways you can't imagine. Harrison stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. But if you can stay committed to this path, if you can build a company that genuinely serves all its stakeholders, you'll create something that lasts beyond quarterly earnings reports. You'll build a legacy worth being proud of. He turned back to face them, his expression serious but hopeful. Which brings me to my proposal. Harrison Industries wants to enter into a long-term partnership with Sterling Corporation, but not just as a client. I want us to collaborate on community development projects across multiple cities. I want to share resources and expertise to create programs that have real, lasting impact. Alex felt his heart racing. This was beyond anything he had hoped for when they started the charity initiative. What would that partnership look like? He asked. Joint funding for community centers, educational programs, and small business development initiatives. Shared best practices for ethical business operations. Collaborative research on sustainable business models. And most importantly, a commitment to measuring success by community impact as well as financial returns. Harrison pulled out a contract and placed it on Alex's desk. This represents a 5-year partnership worth approximately $50 million in combined community investment. But it comes with non-negotiable requirements for transparency, community input, and measurable social outcomes. Zara stared at the contract, hardly believing what she was hearing. This wasn't just a business deal, it was validation of everything they had been working toward. Mr. Harrison, Alex said slowly, this is incredibly generous, but I have to ask why? Why are you willing to invest this much in an unproven partnership? Harrison's smile was knowing. Because 30 years ago, someone took a chance on me when I was trying to transform my company's approach to business. Because I've seen what you've accomplished in just 2 weeks, and I can imagine what you might accomplish in 5 years. And because Miss Williams reminds me of the community advocate who helped me understand what real social responsibility looks like." He gathered his things and headed toward the door, then paused. "There's one more thing. This partnership will require someone to oversee community relations for both companies. Miss Williams, if you're interested, I'd like to offer you the position of Director of Community Partnerships for our joint initiative. The salary would be comparable to what I offered you before, but you'd be working to expand what you've started here rather than starting over somewhere else." After Harrison left, Alex and Zara sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. The media attack that had seemed like a potential disaster had somehow led to the opportunity of a lifetime. "I can't believe it," Zara said finally. "A $50 million partnership focused on community development." "Zara," Alex said, his voice serious, "you realize what this means? You'd essentially be running community relations for two major corporations. This is the career opportunity you've been working toward your entire life." "I know," she replied, but she was looking at him rather than the contract. "Alex, what does this mean for us? For whatever is happening between us personally?" Alex stood up and moved around the desk to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. "It means we'll have to be even more careful about maintaining professional boundaries. It means people will scrutinize our relationship and question our motives. It means we'll be under pressure to prove that our personal feelings don't compromise our professional judgment. And are you okay with that?" Alex lifted her hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Zara, I would rather navigate the complications of loving you while building something meaningful together than have an easy relationship with someone who doesn't challenge me to be better. What we have isn't simple, but it's real and it's worth fighting for. Even if it means facing more attacks like the one this morning? Especially then. Because now I know we can handle whatever comes our way as long as we face it together." As they sat together in Alex's office, holding hands and contemplating a future that was more exciting and challenging than either of them had dared to imagine, both Alex and Zara realized that they had found something neither of them had been looking for, a partnership that was both deeply personal and professionally transformative, a love that made them better individually and stronger together. The boy who had built walls to protect himself from disappointment had found someone worth taking them down for. The girl who had always put others' needs before her own had found someone who valued her dreams as much as she did. And together they were about to embark on work that would impact communities across the country while building a relationship that defied all the conventional wisdom about workplace romance. "So," Alex said, squeezing her hands gently, "are you ready to change the world?" "With you." Zara smiled, her heart full of love and possibility. "I'm ready for anything." 3 months later, the Sterling Corporation building buzzed with an energy that hadn't existed in its corporate halls for years. The 15th floor had been transformed into the headquarters for the Sterling Harrison Community Partnership, with open workspaces that encouraged collaboration and walls covered with photos from community projects across 5 different cities. Zara stood in her new office, looking out at the city where this unlikely journey had begun, feeling a mixture of pride and anticipation that still surprised her some mornings. Her official title was Director of Community Partnerships, but her actual role had evolved into something much more significant. She was essentially rebuilding how 2 major corporations approached social responsibility. Knock knock. Alex's voice came from her doorway, and she turned to see him holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the relaxed smile that had become familiar over the past few months. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said with mock formality, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Ms. Williams," he replied in the same tone, though his eyes held warmth that was anything but professional. They had maintained careful boundaries at work, keeping their personal relationships separate from their professional partnership. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when Alex's hand would brush hers during meetings, or when their eyes would meet across a conference table and the air would spark with unspoken feelings. But they had both agreed that the work they were doing was too important to risk compromising with office gossip or questions about favoritism. "Are you ready for tonight?" Alex asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. Tonight was the celebration dinner for the Sterling Harrison Community Partnership, marking 3 months of successful programs and the announcement of expanded partnerships with 6 additional corporations. Community leaders from all their partner cities would be there, along with corporate executives, local politicians and media representatives who had come to document what business journals were calling the new model for corporate social responsibility. "I'm nervous," Zara admitted. "This feels like a moment where everything we've built gets evaluated by people who matter." "You know what Mrs. Thompson told me yesterday?" Alex asked. "She said that in 30 years of community work, she's never seen corporate partners follow through on commitments the way we have. She said you've restored her faith in the possibility of genuine business community collaboration. Zara felt warmth spread through her chest. Mrs. Thompson's opinion meant more to her than any business award or media recognition. And you know what Robert Harrison told me? Alex continued. He said that working with us has reminded him why he fell in love with business in the first place. He's already talking about expanding our partnership into international development work. Alex, Zara said, setting down her coffee and looking at him seriously, do you ever wonder if we're moving too fast? 3 months ago, you were a completely different person with completely different priorities. Alex was quiet for a moment, considering her question with the thoughtfulness she had come to love about him. Sometimes I wonder if I was always this person, underneath all the corporate armor, he said finally. Like maybe meeting you didn't change me so much as it reminded me who I was before I decided that caring about people was a luxury I couldn't afford. And now I know that caring about people isn't a luxury, it's the foundation of everything meaningful. Before Zara could respond, her assistant knocked on the door with news that made both of them smile. Ms. Williams, your mother is here for lunch. Diane Williams had become a regular visitor to the Sterling Corporation building, officially as a volunteer coordinator for several community programs, but really because she had appointed herself as unofficial supervisor of her daughter's happiness. She entered Zara's office with the confident stride of someone who belonged wherever she chose to be. Good morning, Alex, she said, giving him the warm hug that had become their usual greeting. You look tired. Are you sleeping enough? Good morning, Mrs. Williams, Alex replied, returning her hug with genuine affection. I'm sleeping fine, thank you for asking. Diane had become one of Alex's strongest supporters, but also his most direct critic when she thought he was working Zara too hard or forgetting to take care of himself. Her protective instincts had expanded to include him, much to his surprise and secret delight. I brought lunch, Diane announced, unpacking containers from a large bag. Rosa made extra Cuban sandwiches and I stopped by that bakery you like for those little chocolate things. As they ate lunch together in Zara's office, Alex found himself marveling at how normal this felt, sharing a meal with the woman he loved and her mother, talking about work and family and future plans with equal enthusiasm. 6 months ago, his lunch meetings had been formal affairs conducted in expensive restaurants with people who wanted something from him. Now his favorite lunch was Cuban sandwiches eaten with 2 women who cared more about his character than his bank account. Alex, Diane said suddenly, I need to ask you something important. Of course. Are you planning to marry my daughter? Mama? Zara nearly choked on her sandwich. What? It's a reasonable question. You two have been dancing around each other for months, making eyes during meetings, finding excuses to work late together. I'm old, not blind. Alex felt his cheeks warm, but he also felt something settle in his chest, a certainty he hadn't realized was there until Diane asked the question directly. Mrs. Williams, he said carefully, I love your daughter more than I've ever loved anyone. She's made me a better person and a better leader. When I think about my future, I can't imagine it without her. That's not what I asked, Diane said with the directness that reminded Alex where Zara got her backbone. Alex looked at Zara, seeing surprise and hope and fear all mixed together in her expression. Yes, he said simply. I'm planning to ask her to marry me. I was going to wait until after tonight's celebration, but since you've brought it up. He stood up and moved around the desk, then dropped to one knee beside Zara's chair, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Zara Williams, he said, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart, you've taught me that real success isn't measured in dollars or deals, but in the difference you make in other people's lives. You've shown me what it means to build something meaningful, something that lasts beyond quarterly reports and annual profits. Zara stared at him, tears beginning to form in her eyes. You've been my partner in transforming Sterling Corporation, my guide in learning how to care about communities instead of just using them, my teacher in understanding that vulnerability is strength, not weakness. But most importantly, you've been the person who helped me remember who I wanted to be before I got lost in corporate success. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was beautiful but not ostentatious, a classic solitaire that sparkled with quiet elegance. Will you marry me, Zara? Will you be my partner in building a life that's as meaningful as the work we do together? Yes, Zara whispered, then louder, yes, of course, yes. As Alex slipped the ring onto her finger, Diane burst into tears and immediately started making phone calls to share the news with everyone she knew. I can't believe you proposed in my office, Zara said, laughing and crying at the same time. I can't believe your mother basically forced me to propose 3 months ahead of schedule, Alex replied, pulling her into his arms. Are you upset about that? Are you kidding? I've been carrying that ring around for 2 weeks, looking for the perfect moment. Turns out the perfect moment was the one where your mother reminded me that life is too short to wait for perfect timing. That evening, the celebration dinner was held in the ballroom of the city's most elegant hotel, but the atmosphere was far from the stuffy corporate events that Sterling Corporation used to host. Community leaders sat at the same tables as corporate executives, children from the after-school programs performed music they had learned through partnership-funded arts programs, and the speeches focused on impact rather than profit. Alex took the stage to address the crowd, but instead of the polished corporate presentation everyone expected, he spoke from the heart about transformation, both personal and professional. 6 months ago, Sterling Corporation approached charity work as a business necessity, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. We wanted to improve our image, satisfy client expectations, and check the corporate social responsibility box on our annual reports. He paused, looking out at the diverse crowd of people who had become genuine partners rather than just beneficiaries. But working with these communities, learning from leaders like Mrs. Thompson and Principal Garcia and so many others, taught me that real corporate responsibility isn't about what you give, it's about what you build together. It's about partnerships based on respect rather than charity based on guilt. The audience was completely attentive, sensing that this wasn't a typical corporate speech. The Sterling Harrison Community Partnership has funded new computer labs and job training programs and community gardens. But more importantly, it's created a new model for how businesses can engage with communities as equal partners in creating positive change. Alex's eyes found Zara in the crowd, and his expression softened. None of this would have been possible without Zara Williams, who taught me that the best business decisions are the ones that serve everyone involved, not just shareholders. Zara showed me that caring about people isn't a weakness to be overcome, it's a strength to be cultivated. He paused again, his voice becoming more personal. Tonight, I want to announce that Zara has agreed to become my wife, and that Sterling Corporation has agreed to make our community partnership model the foundation of all our business relationships going forward. The applause was thunderous, but Alex wasn't finished. We're also announcing the creation of the Community Partnership Foundation, with an initial funding commitment of $100 million over the next 5 years. This foundation will be directed entirely by community leaders, with corporate partners serving in advisory roles only. As Alex returned to his seat amid sustained applause, Zara felt overwhelmed by pride and love and gratitude for the journey that had brought them to this moment. 6 months ago, she had been an invisible assistant working for an impossible boss. Tonight, she was a respected professional engaged to a man who had proven that people really could change when they found the right motivation. Later, as they danced together at the celebration, Alex held Zara close and whispered in her ear. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For seeing who I could become before I saw it myself. For believing in me when I didn't deserve it. For teaching me that the best kind of success is the kind that lifts everyone up." "Thank you for being brave enough to change," Zara replied. "And for loving me enough to let me be part of that change." As they swayed together on the dance floor, surrounded by community leaders and corporate executives and family members who had all played a part in their unlikely love story, Alex and Zara both knew that they had found something rare and precious, a partnership that made them better individually and stronger together, a love that transformed not just their own lives but the lives of everyone they touched. 1 year later, Zara Williams Sterling stood in the bridal suite of the community center where their love story had truly begun, surrounded by the women who had shaped her journey. Her mother was carefully adjusting her veil, Mrs. Thompson was offering last-minute advice about marriage, and Rosa was making sure everyone had enough to eat despite their pre-ceremony nerves. "You look beautiful, Mija," Rosa said, stepping back to admire Zara in her elegant but understated wedding dress. "But more importantly, you look happy." "I am happy," Zara said, and she meant it completely. The past year had brought challenges, navigating their relationship under public scrutiny, managing the complexities of their professional partnership, learning to balance personal and business priorities. But through it all, she and Alex had grown stronger together, more committed to each other and to the work they were building. "Are you ready for this?" Mrs. Thompson asked, but she was smiling because she already knew the answer. "More than ready," Zara replied. Across the building, in what used to be the community center's storage room but had been converted into a groom's preparation area, Alex was having his own pre-ceremony moment with the men who had become his chosen family. Robert Harrison was helping him with his tie, while Miguel Santos from the job training program offered encouragement, and surprisingly Richard Pemberton, who had returned to Sterling Corporation after a long conversation about values and priorities, made sure his suit was perfect. "You know," Richard said, "a year ago I thought you were losing your mind with all this community outreach stuff." "And now?" Alex asked. "Now I think you're the sanest person I know. You found someone who makes you better, work that makes you proud, and a way to be successful that doesn't require stepping on other people. That's not losing your mind, that's finding your soul." The ceremony itself was held in the main hall of the Riverside Community Center, decorated with flowers from the community garden and filled with a guest list that would have been unimaginable at a typical corporate wedding. Community leaders sat next to business executives, children from the after-school programs served as flower girls and ring bearers, and the officiating minister was someone who had known Zara since she was a child. As Alex waited at the altar, watching the doors for his first glimpse of his bride, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. A year ago, he had been a man who measured success only in financial terms, who treated people as resources to be managed rather than individuals to be valued. Now he was about to marry the woman who had taught him that the best kind of success was the kind that created value for everyone it touched. When the doors opened and Zara appeared, walking down the aisle with her mother and beaming with joy, Alex felt his heart stop and restart. She was radiant, not just because she was beautiful, but because she was so completely herself, confident, graceful, surrounded by people who loved her for who she was rather than what she could do for them. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Alexander and Zara, two people who have found in each other not just love, but partnership in building something meaningful together." The ceremony was personal and heartfelt, with vows they had written themselves and readings chosen by community members who had watched their relationship develop. When Alex spoke his vows, his voice was steady and strong. "Zara, you taught me that real strength comes from caring about other people, that true success is measured by the positive impact you have on the world around you. You showed me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the foundation of genuine connection." He paused, looking into her eyes with complete sincerity. "I promise to be your partner in everything, in building a business that serves all its stakeholders, in creating programs that genuinely help communities, in raising children who understand that privilege comes with responsibility. I promise to love you not just when it's easy, but especially when it requires courage and commitment." When Zara spoke her vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "Alex, you proved to me that people really can change when they find the right motivation. You showed me that it's possible to be successful and ethical, powerful and caring, ambitious and generous all at the same time." Her voice caught slightly with emotion before she continued. "I promise to be your partner in transformation, helping you become the man you're meant to be while becoming the woman I'm meant to be beside you. I promise to challenge you when you need it, support you when you doubt yourself, and love you through every success and every setback." When they were pronounced husband and wife, their kiss was met with applause that seemed to shake the entire building. As they walked back down the aisle together, Alex and Zara both felt the profound satisfaction of knowing they had found not just love, but purpose. The reception was held in the same space, transformed with tables full of food from Rosa's Cafe and other local businesses. Instead of a traditional wedding cake, they had arranged for desserts from every community bakery they had worked with through their partnership programs. The evening was filled with music from local artists, dancing that brought together people from every walk of life, and speeches that celebrated not just the couple but the community they had all built together. "I have an announcement," Alex said during his reception speech, pulling Zara close beside him. "Starting next month, Sterling Corporation will be implementing a new policy that I'm calling the Community Partnership Standard. Every business decision we make will be evaluated not just on financial impact, but on how it affects our employees, our clients, and the communities where we operate." The crowd cheered, but Alex wasn't finished. "We're also announcing that Zara and I will be establishing the William Sterling Foundation, dedicated to supporting community-led development projects across the country. Our goal is to prove that businesses can be engines of positive social change when they commit to genuine partnership instead of top-down charity." As the evening continued, Alex found himself dancing with Mrs. Thompson while Zara was swept around the floor by Miguel Santos, both of them laughing as they tried to keep up with his enthusiastic salsa moves. "You know," Mrs. Thompson said to Alex, "when Zara first brought you to our community center, I thought you were just another rich man looking for a tax write-off and some good publicity. What changed your mind? Watching you actually listen. Seeing you come back week after week, not to lecture or direct but to learn. Most importantly, watching how you looked at Zara, like she was teaching you something you'd been searching for your whole life. Alex glanced over at his wife, who was now dancing with her mother while Rosa and several other community women cheered them on. He said simply. She taught me that success without purpose is just expensive emptiness. And what are you going to teach her? The question surprised Alex. What do you mean? Marriage is about mutual growth, honey. Zara has changed you for the better, but the best marriages are the ones where both people become more than they could be alone. So what are you going to teach her? Alex thought about the question as he watched Zara laugh with her community family, surrounded by people who had loved and supported her long before he entered her life. I think I'm going to teach her that she deserves to dream as big as her talent allows, he said finally. Zara has spent her whole life taking care of other people, making sure everyone else succeeds. I want to spend our marriage making sure she knows that her dreams matter just as much as everyone else's. Mrs. Thompson smiled approvingly. Good answer. Now go dance with your wife before Rosa decides to steal her for another round of storytelling. As the evening wound down, Alex and Zara found themselves on the small balcony where they had first talked about her proposal to save the charity project. The city spread out below them, but instead of looking like a kingdom to be conquered, it looked like a community to be served. Any regrets? Alex asked, pulling Zara close against the cool night air. About what? About marrying your boss. About choosing the complicated path instead of the easy one. Zara looked up at him, her eyes bright with happiness and certainty. Alex, a year ago I thought success meant climbing the corporate ladder and proving I belonged in boardrooms where people like me weren't usually welcome. But you taught me something better, that real success means building something that matters, with someone who sees your worth and helps you become everything you're capable of being. She paused, looking out at the city lights. I used to think love was something that happened to you if you were lucky. But loving you has taught me that the best love is something you choose every day, something you build together through challenges and growth and shared commitment to something bigger than yourselves. So no regrets? None. Well, except maybe that it took us so long to figure out what we both wanted. Alex laughed, spinning her around in a dance move that was probably more enthusiasm than technique. Mrs. Williams Sterling, I love you. Mr. Williams Sterling, I love you too. As they kissed under the stars, both of them felt the deep satisfaction of knowing they had found something rare and precious, a love that made them better people, a partnership that would create positive change in the world, and a future that promised adventure, growth, and meaning. 6 months later, Zara stood in the conference room of Sterling Corporation, presenting their quarterly community impact report to a room full of executives from companies across the country who had come to learn about their partnership model. The numbers were impressive: job training programs that had placed 89% of participants in stable employment, educational initiatives that had improved test scores in 12 schools, community development projects that had attracted additional investment to underserved neighborhoods. But what made Zara proudest wasn't the statistics, it was the relationships. The network of community leaders who now called Sterling Corporation a trusted partner. The employees who spoke about being excited to come to work because they felt their efforts were making a difference. The other corporations that were adopting similar models because they had seen that ethical business practices could enhance rather than diminish profitability. The key to sustainable community partnership, Zara explained to the assembled executives, is understanding that communities don't need saving, they need supporting. Our role isn't to impose solutions, but to listen to what communities identify as their priorities and find ways to support their own solutions. After the presentation, as executives from other companies lined up to discuss potential partnerships, Alex watched his wife with the kind of pride that had nothing to do with possession and everything to do with witnessing someone fulfill their highest potential. Robert Harrison, who had become not just a business partner but a genuine friend, joined Alex at the back of the room. She's remarkable, Harrison said. I've seen a lot of corporate executives give presentations about social responsibility, but Zara talks about it like someone who actually lives it. She does live it, Alex replied. That's what makes her so effective. This isn't a job for her, it's a calling. And what about you? Any regrets about transforming your entire business model for love? Alex considered the question, thinking about the past 18 months of challenges and growth and unexpected discoveries. Robert, I spent the first 32 years of my life building a company that made money but didn't make meaning. The past year and a half, building something with Zara that creates value for everyone it touches, employees, clients, communities, has been the most professionally satisfying time of my life. Even with all the complications of mixing business and marriage? Especially because of those complications. Zara challenges me to be better every day, professionally and personally. Having a partner who holds you accountable to your highest values isn't always comfortable, but it's always worth it. That evening, Alex and Zara walked through the neighborhood where they had first begun to really know each other, past Rosa's cafe where they had waited out the rainstorm, past the community center where they had gotten married, past the school where children were staying late for the tutoring program their foundation had expanded. "What are you thinking about?" Zara asked, noticing Alex's contemplative mood. "I'm thinking about the man I was 2 years ago and the man I am now. I'm thinking about how different my definition of success has become. I'm thinking about how lucky I am that you saw something worth saving in me before I saw it myself." "You know what I'm thinking about?" "What?" "I'm thinking about the woman I was 2 years ago, so focused on proving myself worthy of respect that I forgot to demand it. I'm thinking about how loving you taught me that I don't have to choose between being successful and being myself." They stopped walking and turned to face each other, two people who had found in each other not just romantic love, but the kind of partnership that multiplied their individual strengths. "Zara," Alex said, taking her hands, "what do you want to build next?" "What do you mean?" "We've proven that corporations can be engines of positive social change. We've created a model that other companies are adopting. We've built a marriage that works even under public scrutiny. What's our next challenge?" Zara smiled, the same radiant expression that had first caught Alex's attention in his office 2 years ago. "I want to build a family," she said. "Children who grow up understanding that privilege comes with responsibility, that success is meaningless without service, that love is something you demonstrate through actions every day. And professionally? I want to take our community partnership model international. I want to prove that American businesses can be forces for positive change in developing economies, that global commerce can lift everyone up instead of just extracting value." Alex felt the familiar thrill of embarking on something challenging and meaningful with the woman he loved. "Mrs. Williams Sterling, you continue to amaze me with the scope of your ambition. Mr. Williams Sterling, you continue to amaze me with your willingness to dream as big as our capacity to serve." As they continued their walk through the neighborhood that had become the symbol of their transformation, Alex and Zara both felt the deep satisfaction of knowing they had built something lasting and meaningful, a love that had changed them both for the better, a business that served all its stakeholders, and a model for how personal relationships and professional partnerships could work together to create positive change in the world. 2 years after Zara Williams had stood in a corporate bathroom fighting back tears of frustration and humiliation, she walked hand in hand with her husband through streets filled with evidence of what they had built together: thriving community programs, successful small businesses, children who had educational opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. And Alex Sterling, who had once measured success only in financial terms, now measured it in the smile of a child who had learned to read in their after-school program, in the gratitude of a single mother who had found stable employment through their job training initiatives, in the knowledge that his company was creating value for everyone it touched rather than just extracting value for its shareholders. Their love story had begun with conflict and misunderstanding, but it had evolved into something neither of them had imagined possible: a partnership that made them both better people, a marriage that strengthened their professional work, and a model for how business success and social responsibility could enhance rather than compete with each other. As they reached their car and prepared to drive home to the life they were building together, Zara looked back at the community center where their wedding reception had been held just over a year ago. "Do you think we'll always remember this feeling?" she asked. "What feeling?" "The feeling that we're exactly where we're supposed to be, doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing with exactly the right person." Alex followed her gaze to the community center, thinking about all the people who had played a part in their journey: Mrs. Thompson, who had challenged them to prove their sincerity; Rosa, who had shown them what genuine community looked like; Diane Williams, who had demanded that Alex prove himself worthy of her daughter's love; Robert Harrison, who had taken a chance on their unconventional approach to business. "I think," Alex said, pulling Zara close for one more kiss before they headed home, "that as long as we keep choosing each other and choosing service over self-interest, we'll always have that feeling. Because we'll always be becoming better versions of ourselves." And as they drove home through the city that had witnessed their transformation from boss and assistant to husband and wife, partners in love and business and social change, both Alex and Zara knew that their story was just beginning. The best chapters, the ones about raising children who understood that success meant service, about building businesses that lifted up entire communities, about proving that love and ambition could work together to change the world, were still to be written. But they would write them together, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one act of love and service at a time. And that was the most beautiful ending and beginning they could have imagined.